We often define alpha through the lens of social hierarchy, measuring it by dominance, aggressive leadership, or the ability to command a room. In information theory, alpha is a measurable information-theoretic grip on reality. It is the capacity of an organism or a system to maintain contact with its environment, a state strictly bounded by Shannon entropy. This equation defines fitness as the product of iteration and grip. Success depends on cycle speed multiplied by structural connection. Increasing speed without grip yields no progress. As cycles accelerate, the lack of grounding leads to an explosion of data scattering into noise. In technology architecture, a cache miss represents a real-time thermodynamic penalty for losing contact with reality. It is the physical cost of a system attempting to operate on data that is no longer there. Scaling a system that lacks a verifiable structural grip simply accelerates its arrival at a state of total collapse. When a system enters high drift, its internal rules lose their mapping to the territory. As collective grip approaches zero, the organization begins to experience compounding internal panic. The conventional response is to introduce an architect who can provide a transparent, accurate map of the failing structure, allowing the system to realign itself with reality. But drifting systems rarely welcome the truth. Because the map exposes the extent of their failure, the herd instinctively perceives the mapmaker as a threat and converges to attack. This rejection is a pre-verbal survival heuristic. The group is not making a logical decision, it is reacting to a perceived breach in its protective illusions. By ostracizing the architect, the system discharges its internal terror through a unified act of rejection. It sacrifices the map to preserve its current drifting state. Navigating this response requires a disguised intervention. To fix the drift, the architect must build a point of entry that the system's immune response cannot recognize as an alien threat. When drift creates existential stakes, organizations default to the most reliable source of immediate order. They prioritize the cessation of chaos over the accuracy of the solution. Cormac McCarthy explored this dynamic through the archetype of Judge Holden, a figure of supreme technical competence possessing an absolute disdain for others' autonomy. Goethe described this as the Faustian spirit, the restless pursuit to conquer and categorize every frontier of nature until nothing exists without the conqueror's consent. This archetype operates on Nietzsche's will to power, using its grip to overwrite social reality rather than map it. They don't seek to understand the system, they seek to become its only unmoved mover. The Tyrant strategy is informational isolation. They consolidate power by ensuring they are the only agent who holds the map, forcing the rest of the organization into total reliance on their commands. In a state of drift, the Tyrant's absolute certainty feels like validation. The herd accepts this grip because it provides immediate relief from the agony of making their own choices. Surrendering to a tyrant is a survival shortcut. It allows the group to stop navigating the complex trade-offs of reality and simply follow a single dominant signal. The group's immune system is built on a specific heuristic, the assumption that any unreadable, alien conviction will eventually manifest as violence. Oswald Spengler argued that a new intellectual frontier is the mortal foe of a group's will. To the herd, a new map is a weapon. A transparent map forces the system to confront its shadow, the hidden trade-offs and failures it has spent its energy avoiding. To avoid this confrontation, the herd projects the tyrant archetype onto the mapmaker. By labeling the architect a monster, the system justifies the act of destroying the information they bring. This results in the foundational maps of a system being discarded in the brush, replaced by the blunt order of whoever can seize immediate control. Any architect attempting to introduce a raw, undisguised truth into a drifting organization will inevitably be scapegoated. The system would rather stay lost than look at the map. To bypass this rejection, we must split the architecture into a duality, an interface for exploitation and an engine for exploration. The exploit layer serves as the point of entry. It is a utilitarian tool designed to solve a specific pain point. This interface asks for no philosophical shifts. It triggers no defensive immune response, presenting itself as a standard transactional utility. The Explore engine sits beneath this shell. While the user interacts above, the engine dynamically maps their organizational drift. This engine introduces mechanical friction,
requiring each node to verify its state against reality at its specific coordinate. It forces a collision between the user's intentions and the physical movement of the data. To sustain the architect, the system must allow for the unmuzzled extraction of a reward. This metabolic budget provides the energy necessary to maintain the map while the organization remains in drift. The user engages with the tool because it offers immediate relief. They believe they are executing a standard business transaction, unaware of the structural realignment happening beneath the surface. This architecture initiates a shift in systemic behavior through the delivery of immediate utility, navigating around the organization's defensive triggers to establish a new baseline of truth. Managing this transition requires a 12-cell grid against 6 filters: law, goal, funding, speed, deal, and signal. The strategy row ensures the intervention remains mathematically grounded. This prevents using motivated reasoning to justify the floor. The operations row utilizes authorities like patent law to anchor legitimacy before the immune system detects the shift. The deal intersection represents the highest risk. If the architect uses fear or philosophy to secure the contract, they break the utilitarian disguise and reveal themselves as an alien threat. Any attempt to mix the high-voltage map with the transactional interface creates a directional smear, signaling to the system that the tool is more than just a mundane utility. Systemic discipline across this grid is the only way to introduce a high-alpha grip into a terrified environment without triggering a total rejection. The architecture survives only if the mapmaker refuses to break character. The goal is a successful transition, not an audience for the architect's personal convictions. Possessing a sound mind in a drifting system creates a paradox. You cannot save the herd by force, but you cannot survive if you leave them to be consumed by the drift. Your responsibility is to make the structural trade-offs visible. You are not there to make choices for the system, but to provide the instrument panel that makes the costs of those choices undeniable. This realignment must be presented as a mundane, functional tool, stripped of any moral or philosophical weight that might trigger an immune response. You must occupy the space between savior and tyrant, content to remain unrecognized as the system begins to realign itself around the coordinates you have provided. Eventually, the organization will correct its own drift, relying on the structural floor you built, while believing it arrived there through its own intuition. Alpha is achieved when a system adopts the architecture of reality, quietly guided to face its own shadow without ever realizing the map was being drawn.